very different, but quite relevant with tomorrow's election. I asked a friend of Temple's, a member of Temple's, Steve Mitchell, to come and share with us a little bit and field some questions from us as well, because Steve is not only a CEO of Mitchell Research and Communications, but has been a pollster and a consultant on hundreds of campaigns and involved in politics, is on the news often. You've seen him on Channel 4 or on Channel 2 regularly over the years. Often on election nights, I can turn on my television and there's Steve talking to me, interpreting things and making sense of it as well. So I thought last week it would be nice, rather than me just sharing some thoughts and prayers and some of the Jewish perspective on voting, not who to vote for, but the civic engagement, but to talk about what really is going on from a friend like Steve. So welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Rabbi. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Really appreciate your time. And I know you're quite busy right now. Your voice is one that people turn to and like to hear and are interested in. So I imagine getting 5-10 minutes of you is really quite valuable.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, I was up early this morning doing radio interviews, and I've got another one at 10 o'clock. So it's the usual typical, your 5 minutes of fame, which will all end somewhere around 10 o'clock on Thursday. So.
Well, we'll keep listening. Well, let's not, keep us all in the dark on your thoughts right now. You've been actively polling and analyzing data and stuff like that. So thoughts on tomorrow, on the biggest election that we're all talking about right now?
Well, I think at the end of the day, probably Joe Biden is going to get elected president. Trump still has a narrow path to victory, but it is a difficult path. In order for Trump to win, he has to win in Texas. He has to win in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, and then it gets tricky. Then he's either got to get Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin, or then you really get then the path really becomes difficult, because he's got to get Arizona and he's got to get Iowa, which he will win. He'll win Iowa, but then he's got to get Minnesota. So he really has to take either Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin in order to do it. And obviously, the president's been spending a great deal of time in all these states. So it is likely going to be a Biden victory, but the percentages on Biden winning have dropped from in one discussion I saw, the odds have dropped from 75 down to 65 in a period of a few days. But again, you look at the odds, you look at the poll data, and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan are all tough. The only thing, as a pollster in Michigan, as we look at it in our own state, 4 years ago, we were looking at our poll numbers, and at that point, the Real Clear Politics averages had Trump winning this state by Hillary Clinton winning this state by 3.6%. Obviously, it was a dead tie, and Trump won by 10,000 votes. But when you see the activity, the fact that both Joe Biden and Barack Obama were in, Donald Trump has been in repeatedly. Yesterday he was in. He's going to be back in again in Traverse City. Then he's going to Kenosha, then back into Grand Rapids to end the day. They must be seeing something in their modeling that shows that this is going to be closer than the pollsters are showing it right now. So again, if I'd bet it's going to be Joe Biden.
When, a lot of talk and a lot of discussion of what we can trust, and not just in polls, but also when the election results come in. And some saying we're not going to know for quite a while. What do you anticipate us finding an answer to that?
Well, I think in Michigan, we'll find out sometime Wednesday. I'm not sure if that's 5 in the morning or 5 in the afternoon, but we'll know Wednesday who won Michigan. They always do a good job of counting the ballots. They'll count all night, and then they'll come back again in the morning and they'll finish it up. So in Michigan, we will know. And a good thing that Michigan has is the election's over at 8 p.m. The Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court have upheld that. You got to have an end date for an election, and the end date is 8 p.m. on election day. If your ballot's not in by then, it doesn't count. And in my mind, that's the way it ought to be. Everybody's got, it's not like you don't have a long time to vote. We all know election day is going to be on November 3rd. So just get your ballot in. So I think we'll know. In terms of other states, where they have different laws where they're going to allow ballots that have been postmarked by a certain date to be counted. It could be that we don't hear from those states until Friday, perhaps even Saturday, but eventually we will find out. Now, if Pennsylvania, which has got some interesting laws, is one of the major states, then it could be a while before we know who's president if that race is close in Pennsylvania.
So hopefully next Shabbos we'll be able to have some calm in the midst of this. Interesting, I read about people's anxiety and stress right now, and all connected to tomorrow and the experience and waiting for results. I'm curious, you've been doing this for many years, seen many elections, both local, general, national. Seems different this year?
No, not for me. Not for me. It's not. It's different for a lot of people, but it's not for me. I've been doing this. I worked on my first congressional race in 1966 for congressman from the Upper Peninsula named Phil Rupee. He served 12 years. Was elected in 66. I managed his U.S. Senate race in 82. In fact, I just spoke to him. He's 94 years old, and had lunch with him in Washington last June. But so I've been around this a long time. It's not different for me. I think it's different for a lot of people. The hyper-partisanship that we have today is unlike hyper-partisanship that we've ever seen. The absolute hatred that exists for candidates. It's interesting. I've got a lot of friends who are for Joe Biden, and they don't understand that the disdain and the hatred that they feel towards Donald Trump is reciprocated by Republicans who felt the same way about Barack Obama and do about Joe Biden. They think that that they're the only ones that have that strong feeling, but in fact, everybody does. You've got this media that's bifurcated. It used to be the media was a referee. Now the media has taken sides. You've got some who are a strong Republican and pro-Trump. You've got the rest that are very strongly in the corner of Joe Biden. And so that doesn't add to it. Then you've got social media. You've got people watching, the Democrats watching MSNBC and CNN, and the Republicans watching the Fox News channel. So you've got everybody getting their media and their news from the place that they agree with, which they agree. And so the bottom line is that we have this enormous problem, and it isn't going to get better. And people think that the Democrats think, well, when Joe Biden gets elected, he'll unite the country. Wrong. He's not going to unite the country because the country at this point, I don't know what will unite the country, but it's not going to be a political figure from either party, because the anger is and the disdain and the animosity and the animus is so great from each. So it's just a very difficult place that we find our country in at this time.
That's concerning.
A real optimistic message, isn't it? I'm
right.
sorry.
Well, I mean, and because at the end of the day, and I was debating with a friend the other night and discussing, and he argued with me that, look, the America is greater than one candidate, no matter who would win, that our country has values that will transcend what this election is. And my concern is I'm seeing those values being, stomped on by individuals when I see people on both sides behaving in ways that are antithetical to what we see as listening to each other and being able to have a conversation. It really is disheartening to what the future is. And it gives me great cause for that as well.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, people who end 40-year friendships because their former friend disagrees with them on politics. I've always had a lot of good friends who are Democrats. For 15 years, I did Flashpoint almost weekly with Debbie Dingell, and John Dingell became a dear friend. I love John. Jim Blanchard's a very good friend. I've got a lot of good friends who are Democrats. I disagree with them. I'm a Republican, but I disagree with their politics. But we've always agreed to disagree agreeably, and that just doesn't happen anymore. I was at a football game with a good friend of mine, been a friend since college, and he and I were arguing politics. We've argued politics since college. He was a Democrat, I'm a Republican. Some guy in front of us wants to get into our argument, and we both told him, this is none of your business. just shut up. This is Don and I having a conversation. But everybody just wants to enter in and share their 2 cents worth. But again, Rabbi, you're the guy that's going to have to try to do the healing. And I don't know how you heal a country that doesn't want to heal itself, and its people are so angry at one another.
We'll start next week with having conversations in the congregation. Look, and try to better understand one another and appreciate others' perspective, and hopefully move beyond where we are right now. There's a lot of things that we need to be, especially in the Jewish community. I think that we can unify on that should bring us together, even when we may vote for different candidates, right? It's interesting because you see the animus in politics in Israel, and the screaming that goes on in the Knesset. And we always say, well, that's not us. Well, great. We're emulating Israel now, a country who we have great reverence for and respect for, yet at the same time, their politics is a quagmire that often gets nothing done, and people are greatly frustrated with right now as well. So it definitely a challenge, and I'm concerned with you, but I'm committed to working through it and to hold on to the values that are really our country.
And I agree. Look, at the end of the day, we're all Americans. We all share a desire for our country to do great things. It's still the greatest country in the history of the world. And I just ask anybody, we're not trying to build walls to keep people from leaving this country, but trying to get in. And so it's because everybody wants to come to America because it is such a great nation. And yet we find ourselves in this real conundrum of just enormous partisanship. I was talking with my wife today, and she said, is this worse than back in Nixon versus McGovern in 1972? And I said, yeah, that's a lot worse. It's a lot worse than even then. It's just, I can go back, and it's not just, everybody wants to say it's Donald Trump, and it's not. I remember thinking back in the 2000 campaign, whether or not I was going to put a question on a survey about both candidates. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable impression? And for those who said they had an unfavorable impression of their opponent, whether it was Gore or Bush, I was going to say, well, do you think you really hate him? Just to see whether or not they'd be willing to say that they do. So this is not something that's new. I just think it's stronger than it was then. Look, the country goes way back. You go back to politics between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. My gosh, those campaigns were every bit as divisive as we have them today. And somehow we got through it, and Jefferson and Adams became great friends by the end of their lives. Both died on the same day on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which is just an extraordinary thing when you think about it. So hopefully we'll get through this, Rabbi, with your help.
Well, I will say that I believe we will. We have to, because that is what we want for our world, and what we have to work towards and commit to working towards. I'm glad. It's funny. I was thinking of Nixon McGovern, and of course, I was only a few years old, but and so I can't personally reflect on it. But I'm glad that Susie brought that question in, because it was on my list.
I was in kindergarten, so.
But and I think we forget, and I forgot, was it in the Washington Post or in the Journal, where I read about the fact how far we have come, and how much how many egregious sins have been committed by our ancestors, right? By people in this country 150, 250 years ago, people who first came to this country, people in Europe, medieval times, horrible things that have occurred in humanity, and how much better we are now in feeding the hungry, in eradicating challenges that exist, and bringing literacy into all populations. So although there's a lot more work to do, we have come far, and we can continue to work on that together. And that ultimately has to be what I think is our responsibility. And that, for me, is really that idea of civic engagement. Why I shared with you yesterday, when I vote, I always wear my yarmulke, or I put my kippah on when I go into the polling booth, because I'm proud as a Jew to have the privilege to vote. right? And I never want to take that for granted. And I want to always be able to honor that. And when I would take my children when they were young with me, I wanted them to see that this is a Jewish value. My grandparents coming from, Eastern Europe weren't afforded that when they were first leaving. And so for us, what that means in this country, that we can never take it for granted and how we hold on to that. And why I'm spending my day tomorrow helping out, working, not for a candidate, but literally working in the polls and helping in that endeavor too.
Well, it's going to be an interesting day, probably a long night and into the next day, perhaps, but or we could know early on some of these big states. If they go to Biden, then it's over. Then there's no path, and then everybody can relax. I remember I was at Channel 4 back in 2012, and I saw that Florida had gone to Obama, and I think it was about 10 after 8, and I said the race is over, that Obama had won. So you can tell some of these things. If one of these major states that I mentioned goes to Biden early, like Florida or Georgia or North Carolina, then the race is over. Then the path is not going to be there for Trump, and the Biden voters can be happy and start celebrating at that point. If, on the other hand, as we saw in 2016, the path to Clinton got narrower and narrower as the night went on and Trump won, that could happen. Unlikely, however.
Yeah. Well, we will see. Hey, I'm sure we'll come back together and have a debrief on this. I really appreciate your time. Like I said, I know how busy you are. I promised you 15 minutes to share with Shir Shalom, with our community. Proud that you're a part of our community of Temple Shir Shalom, and that you care deeply about this endeavor and understanding it and helping others understand it and interpret the information as well.
Thank you very much. And I want to say that I certainly much prefer to go to Temple during the high holy days, but I think that the services via Zoom on YouTube were terrific, and that it wasn't the same as being there, but it was still good that we had them and that we could join together during the high holidays.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We worked hard at that, but we missed having people in our pews. That's for sure. It was very strange, and we look forward to being able to be together. And look, we're Jews. We hug. We like seeing each other.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Well, it's sort of like watching those empty football stadiums. Watching Michigan Stadium on a Saturday afternoon. I've missed a Michigan State game since 1984 when I was out in Seattle working for Reagan Bush, 84. So it was just strange not to be there, especially on a gorgeous sunny day. But hopefully we'll have a sunny day after the election, and the country will begin to try to reunite. I am, however, somewhat pessimistic. So you be the optimist, Rabbi.
I'm going to work on it, okay?
All
Thank
right.
you, Steve. Appreciate your time. Have a good week. And everyone, please vote tomorrow. And for our Shir Shalom members, hey, log in if you see on Facebook or on our emails, and let us know you voted, because, of course, we're competing with a synagogue in Columbus, Ohio, Congregation Beth Shalom, and who gets a higher percentage of our members to vote. And when you vote and let us know, they'll have to wear Michigan and Michigan State gear on their bima down in Columbus. I'm not going to say what we would have to wear, because that's not going to happen. So let us know you voted, and appreciate that. So it's our responsibility as Jews, and we're really proud of everyone who's doing it. So thank you.
I voted. So thank you.
Awesome. We'll count you guys. Take care. Thanks, Brian, behind the scenes, taking care of everything. Brian Fishman, our executive director. And